Hi, welcome back to Canada's Social Changemakers. If you're just joining us, it is an ongoing series of conversations with Canadians making a positive contribution. And my name is Justin Douglas. Today, I will be in conversation with a pretty amazing Canadian. His name is Kimahli Powell, the Executive Director of Rainbow Railroad, an organization dedicated to helping LGBTQIA+ peoples fleeing state-sponsored persecution all around the globe. And I'd just like to acknowledge I'm in Victoria, British Columbia, which is part of the unceded territories of the Algonquin-speaking peoples, also known as the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, as well as the Wasanich peoples. So thank you so much for joining me today, Kimahli.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Great. Just to get the conversation going, can you tell us a little bit about Rainbow Railroad? What is the organization? How does it start? And what does it do?
Rainbow Railroad is an international-based organization which was founded in Toronto, Canada, and is now has charitable status in both Canada and the United States. And our mission is to help persecuted LGBTQI+ persons facing persecution find safety. Right now, although we have made progress on human rights for LGBTQI people, the reality is in 69 countries, there are laws and policies that criminalize same-sex intimacy. And the ripple effects of those laws and policies that are deeply rooted in colonialism are that they displace people and cause environments where people are being persecuted by sometimes their families, sometimes the communities, and oftentimes the state. And so while we believe that our ultimate aim is a world where people can live their lives free of persecution in the country which they have lived and born and raised, the reality is that sometimes people need to make emergency decisions to flee, and Rainbow Railroad exists to help those people find pathways to safety.
That's pretty amazing work that you are involved in. Is it a not-for-profit structure? What does the organization look like?
Yes, we're a non-for-profit charitable organization, both in Canada and the United States. We were founded in 2006 as a collective and remained that way until 2013, where we became charitable as an organization. And we've grown remarkably from just being a volunteer-based organization to myself, executive director, having a very small infrastructure to an infrastructure now in 2 countries that helps hundreds of people a year with hundreds of volunteers across the globe.
That's amazing. And then how do you identify people who would need help or support from your organization?
Right now, we receive about 3,000 requests for help a year, which is a staggering number that keeps on increasing the more we're actually able to help more people. I really believe that the global fight for human rights of LGBTQI people will, they say the moral arc of justice bends towards freedom, and I believe that. The reality is that there is a backlash of LGBTQI human rights defenders in many countries. And the ripple effects is that it puts people at risk. So we triage every case and determine how we could help as many people as possible. And we, on average, help 200 people a year through emergency relocation and provide additional support to additional 200 to 300 people a year.
Wow. So what does that mean exactly? Let's say you get an application, you've identified him, her, or they as someone who needs your support. What would a process look like for someone coming to you for relocation specifically?
So when someone requests help, we take a look at their case. We try to verify their information. We work closely with partners on the ground to help refer cases. Then we look at what's possible, depending on the country, depending on the type of persecution, depending on a number of factors on where they fit within their LGBTQI plus identity within the context of the country, we can determine whether there are options for them. If we are able to determine options, we then actively look at a pathway to safety for that person. Once we are able to do that, we fund the entire process, including the travel. Where our journey ends, especially if there's relocation involved, is that we do not engage in resettlement. We choose countries like Canada that have advanced human rights for LGBTQI plus persons, but also a structure to support refugees. And then we count on governments as well as community-based organizations to provide support to the citizens once they arrive.
And what kind of countries, like you said, you operate in Canada and the United States on the front end, but in terms of countries that you operate in, there's like 69, I think you mentioned, that have questionable LGBTQIA plus policies. Can you give some examples of some of the persecutions people might face in different countries around the world?
Sure. I think the most recent high-profile example came, around. So there's so many. It's hard to pinpoint one. I'll say that the trajectory of laws and policies that have made a big impact, include 10 years ago, 2009, Uganda's parliament tried to impose a bill that was known as the Kill the Gays bill, which sought to impose a death penalty on LGBTQI plus persons, as one example. In 2013, Russia doesn't criminalize same-sex intimacy, but they imposed a new anti-propaganda bill, which effectively sought out to muzzle LGBTQI organizing in the country. You saw Brunei just recently, a year ago, impose Sharia law, which could impose deep penalties to many groups, including the LGBTQI plus community. And so when I say these laws and policies are rooted in colonialism, what I mean by that is that, the sodomy laws were imposed by British colonialism in these countries. I think that's important for viewers to understand. And some of those laws just stayed on the books. Canada still has remnants of laws on its books. And over time, countries chip away at them. You see advancement to reducing those. Either the numbers was in the 70s and it's gone down to the 60s. Sometimes it swings back up. You saw India be the country with the largest population decriminalize its sodomy law just about 2 years ago. And on the other side, you see countries advance new laws and policies which seek to go further. And that's where we need to remain vigilant. And it's important for viewers to understand that, unfortunately, there are outside influences in global North countries like the United States and Canada of conservative Christian groups that have an agenda to import homophobia within those countries. And I say that understanding that there are great organizations like the Rainbow Faith and Freedom that try to use Christianity to be supportive of LGBTQI rights, but we have to realize that there are factors that are putting dangerous new laws in the books in these countries around the world.
Yeah, that brings up so many interesting points. Like Russia, Chechnya obviously is an example that a lot of us are familiar with. I think some of us have been exposed to your organization a little bit if you are a fan of Canada's Drag Race season 1. There was a makeover challenge where we were introduced to a few people who have worked with Rainbow Railroad from, I think, Iran and a few other countries. And it seems like we're making some progress, like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And I wanted to ask about the American experience as well. And now we're sort of out of the Trumpian age, hopefully, but there did feel like there was a regression in a lot of the laws that we've come to. So how is it going in the States for you?
So we started our charitable status in the United States in 2015, 2016. And when I became executive director, I was really optimistic about the potential that would happen in the United States to bring more people to safety. I did not anticipate I did not anticipate the results of the election, but Rainbow Railroad is a nonpartisan organization. But I think also wasn't prepared for the policies that would follow, the travel ban. And a reminder that the travel ban, known as a Muslim ban, ultimately expanded to include countries that don't have majority in Muslim populations, but just became this list of countries that were excluded into the United States that also criminalized same-sex intimacy. I think that was one challenging factor. The second was the egregious, inhumane policies around the southern border that created a quagmire in Mexico, where we do work with partners on the ground. And then the third, and probably the most dangerous, was detention policies around individuals. And I think we paused relocation efforts in the United States once we had clients that we help face detention. I'll give you an example. Someone that we helped travel from Nigeria into the United States got detained at their first stop within the country and got detained for 2 months. And I'll never forget the story of him telling us that they had to go to the hospital, and in the hospital they were handcuffed to the bed. COVID exacerbated also the experience there. Not to get into the weeds for your viewers, but there's actually an agreement between Canada and the United States called the Safe Third Country Agreement that acknowledges that once you land in either country, you're safe. So if you land in the United States, you can't actually cross over to Canada and make another refugee claim because you've already landed in a safe country. And during the Trump administration, there's an appeal to a ruling that challenged whether the United States is safe for refugees. And think about that for a second. That was a really impactful statement. So the Biden administration comes with new possibilities to roll back some of these policies. And even more so, the administration released a memo last month that is exciting, specifically for Rainbow Railroad, because it talks about LGBTQI human rights globally, and specifically cites refugees and newcomers. So that's the nexus to which we have specific expertise, and so we look forward to advancing policies in both countries that help newcomers find pathways of safety.
Great, I hope so. Has there been any sort of negative consequences in terms of other governments or regimes from countries where you're helping people flee? Has there been any sort of, I don't know, death threats against your workers, political ramifications, social ramifications of working in these countries?
I mean, I wonder the places where I'm not allowed to travel, but we're not traveling anywhere. So I think we're okay for now.
Good.
I would say that I mostly think about the partners we work. Rainbow Railroad acts as a facilitator to help people find pathways to safety, but we rely on brave human rights defenders on the ground who risk their lives often. So I'm not often worried about my safety. I'm worried about the safety of the human rights defender that is every day advocating for the rights of their citizens, their country. And they do that already in the context of sometimes criminalization, sometimes watch from the state. And so they're the ones that globally we should be thinking about.
Yeah, human rights defenders all over the world, land defenders, rights defenders are so often jeopardized, and we see it all around the world. And it's part of the reason why I'm so impressed with the work that you're doing and helping people find safety, actually saving lives. Do you do policy work as well? Do you advocate to governments to change legislation policy? Are you involved in that at all?
Absolutely. I mean, our work inherently it was meant to demonstrate that there are ultimately other paths. And so we encourage the government of Canada and have advocated directly to the government of Canada to continue to adopt laws and policies that provide as many pathways to safety for refugees. And Canada has done a lot of good work. There is a wonderful sponsorship program that allows communities all across the country to rally together and support LGBTQI refugees. We do that with our partner, Rainbow Refugee in Vancouver, and a coalition of organizations across the country. And viewers will know what this is about if you think about Canada's efforts to support the Syrian refugees a number of years ago. There's a way to do that specifically for LGBTQI plus persons. And if you have the means to do it and can volunteer the time, I strongly suggest you consider it.
Absolutely.
But that's only one thing. That does not account for people who are stuck within their country and can't cross a border to register with the UN and wait a long period of time. And that generally tends to be people who are even more marginalized within the LGBTQI community, trans folks, women who don't have access to their documentation, for example.
Yeah, I think because I work in immigration and refugee law in Toronto, and it's overwhelming to me, sort of the process is like, of course, we need to have a clear process, but sometimes the red tape and the paperwork can feel very overwhelming for people. And do you have any follow-up? Like once someone is settled into a country, how do you maintain any sort of connections with the people you've helped?
No, not really. I mean, there's now over 1,000 people we've helped relocate. And I think there's a number of mitigating factors. We want people to live their life with autonomy. Some folks reach out to us to say they want to share their story, they want to hear their voice. We take very seriously and mindful to protect and not exploit the people who we help and put no conditions on the help we've done. On the other hand, in order to really monitor our progress, we have to be really mindful of the impact of our interventions. As I said earlier at the top of this conversation, we don't do resettlement work, but we also have to watch whether we are bringing asylum seekers into communities where they're not receiving enough support from governments and communities. And that's a tension that we take very seriously, mindful that one country's refugee system is different than the others, and we have to be equitable for the refugees we help bring into Canada versus Europe versus the United States. And we, especially as we look at this is a big issue. I don't want to overwhelm your viewers, but there are 80 million displaced people now around the world. That's the highest number since World War II. And countries, if Canada last year received the most number of refugees around the world. And that number is, that's something to be proud of, except when you understand that that number was 18,000 people. So you take 80 million and then you take 18,000, and then you understand the gap. And so we have to square what we're trying to do with knowing that we need to help as many people as possible, but not wanting to put people in situations where they're struggling once they get to the other side. And to go back to a question you said about the United States, one thing that we're looking at closely, which is really encouraging, is their commitment to increase their numbers from a low of 19,000 just 2 years ago to 125,000 this year.
Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, those numbers are staggering and overwhelming. And then if you think of climate change and these things that we're going to have to deal with collectively in our future, then numbers could be even greater. And so the work that you're doing is more important now than ever. To shift a little bit, can you maybe talk a little bit about your own personal experience? How did you get involved in the organization, and why is it something you're so passionate about?
Yeah, sure. I think I am really proud to have played a role in the organization's growth. I took on the role of executive director after just not too long after it got started as a not-for-profit. I had a predecessor who I'm thankful helped set up initial processes, because that is something I was not going to be interested in doing. And so I had a little base to work with. And again, we've skyrocketed since then in just a short period of time. I've come from a background committed to social justice. I spent 5 years prior to that working with a wonderful organization called the Canadian HIV/AIDS Legal Network, another Canadian-based organization doing wonderful work internationally on issues like drug policy, internationally, defending the rights of, actually, I should clarify, their name is now HIV Legal Network. Mm-hmm. But doing wonderful work supporting the rights of sex workers, people who use drugs, and the LGBTQIA organization. One of my colleagues, Maurice Tomlinson, who works for the network, is advancing Jamaica's anti-sodomy law as we speak. So I just come from a tradition of human rights defenders doing remarkable work. I'm committed to social justice, and having the opportunity to lead an organization that has such a clear mission and vision was something that really appealed to me, and I'm humbled to be able to lead the organization.
Wow, that's great. What are your hopes, aspirations for the future of Rainbow Railroad? And more broadly, what are your hopes and aspirations for LGBTQIA+ rights here at home and globally?
Yeah, having worked in the HIV/AIDS movement, and having come of age kind of just after the sacrifices of so many people when the epidemic hit, I was always mindful of this notion that HIV/AIDS organizations' goal was to eradicate the pandemic. And success is when these organizations would not exist. And I always thought that was kind of a altruistic but kind of impossible goal. And the legal network taught me that until you eradicate the underlying factors, you're never going to end the pandemic. And I think about LGBTQI rights globally the same way. I want to say to you, Rainbow Railroad, we're successful when Rainbow Railroad doesn't need to exist, but that's incomplete. I think we'll know we're successful when people have as many options to live their lives they choose, free from persecution in the countries they choose. I'm able to have that conversation while I'm right now sheltered in place in Toronto, Canada, which is the home of unceded territory of many nations, but others don't. And so success means expanding the amount of people who can, while ensuring those who cannot have options to flee.
Yeah, absolutely. For people who want more information, would maybe potentially like to donate, volunteer, learn more about the organization, where can they find more information about you and the work that you do?
Please go to rainbowrailroad.org. You'll learn more about our work there. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's really the best way to keep up on what's happening around the world. We highlight brave human rights defenders and sound the alarm on issues all the time. So please follow us, learn more, and stay engaged.
Yeah, if you're interested,
if you can, donate.
Donate, of course. If you're interested in finding out more, all of the links will be provided in the description below. Kimahli Powell, thank you so much for your time, for all the amazing work that you're doing, you as an individual and the organization of Rainbow Railroad. I am so grateful that you have helped so many people change and really save their lives. So from my deepest place of gratitude, thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I just say one more thing before we go? That's really important. Rainbow Railroad at this moment, remarkably does not has not received any government funding for our work. So I say that because while you're thanking me, I'm just one person. Our work is truly reflective of a community. I've got 15 dedicated colleagues that that have been doing this work in the midst of a pandemic, and hundreds of volunteers, and a community of thousands of people who've given anything from major contributions to doing bake sales, drag shows, leather events. This movement truly is reflective of a community. So while you're thanking me, I'm just one person of what a powerful community looks like.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'll say thank you to everyone involved, and to our community and to the greater communities who care about not only LGBTQI plus rights, but human rights across the board. It's so important in this time. And I just appreciate all the work that's being done. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.